The Varaks had made a terrible mistake. They did not know it yet, but the moment their slave ships entered the Sol system and descended upon Earth's outer colonies, they had sealed their own fate. For 300 years, humanity had been spreading across the stars, building colonies, establishing trade routes, and creating the foundation of what they called the Terran Empire. They were young compared to the ancient species of the galaxy. They were considered weak, primitive, and easy prey. The Varaks believed this more than anyone else. The attack came without warning on a quiet morning on the colony world of New Helsinki. The sky turned dark as massive Varaks harvester ships blocked out the twin suns. People looked up in confusion, having never seen such vessels before. Within minutes, thousands of capture pods rained down from the sky. Families were torn apart. Children were ripped from their mothers' arms. Strong men and women were stunned with neural disruptors and dragged into containment fields. The Varak soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, selecting only the healthiest specimens for their cargo holds. Commander Elena Vasquez was off-world when she received the distress signal. Her patrol vessel, the ISS Defiant, was conducting routine exercises near the asteroid belt when the transmission cut through all channels. She heard the screams. She heard the pleas for help. She heard the sounds of families being destroyed. Then she heard silence. By the time she arrived at New Helsinki, the Varaks were gone. But they had left behind devastation that would haunt humanity forever. The colonies of New Helsinki, Proxima Station, and the Kepler settlements had been hit simultaneously in a coordinated assault. The Varaks had taken over 4 million humans in a single day. 4 million souls now trapped in the cargo holds of alien ships, destined for slave markets across the galaxy. The message was clear. Humanity was nothing but cattle to be harvested at will. The Varaks had done this to dozens of species before. None had ever fought back successfully. None had ever made them pay. Admiral Marcus Chun stood before the emergency session of the Imperial Council 3 days after the attacks. His face was stone, but his eyes burned with cold fury. He had lost his daughter and grandson in the raid on Proxima Station. Every person in that room had lost someone. The grief was overwhelming, but beneath it lay something far more dangerous. The Varaks had awakened something in humanity that had been dormant since the species left Earth. They had awakened the ancient rage of a predator that had clawed its way to the top of its food chain through blood and fire. The Council voted unanimously for total war. Not containment, not negotiation, not measured response. Total war. Every shipyard in the Empire began working around the clock. Factories that had been producing consumer goods switched to military production. Scientists abandoned peaceful research to develop new weapons. The entire species mobilized with a single purpose. The Varaks would learn that humans were not prey. They would learn this lesson in fire and blood, and they would learn it only once, because there would be no Varaks left to forget it. The Imperial fleet assembled over the next 6 months. 300 warships gathered at the staging point near Jupiter, dreadnoughts bristling with weapons, carrier ships holding thousands of fighters, destroyers and cruisers armed with plasma cannons and antimatter missiles. At the center of the formation sat the flagship, the Ice Vengeance. Admiral Chun stood on its bridge, looking out at the greatest military force humanity had ever assembled. Every ship had been painted with the names of the colonies that had been attacked. Every crew member wore a black band on their arm in memory of those who had been taken. The Varak's homeworld was called Vor Prime. It sat at the heart of their empire, protected by defense platforms and patrol fleets. The Varaks had conquered 37 species and enslaved billions of beings over their long history. Their military was experienced and well-equipped. They had fought wars of conquest for thousands of years. They believed themselves invincible. They believed that no species would dare attack their home. They were about to discover how wrong they were. The Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Varak system like an angel of death. Sensors across Vor Prime lit up with warnings as 300 human warships appeared where moments before there had been empty space. The Varax High Command was initially confused. No species had ever brought such a force to their doorstep. Some thought it was a mistake, a navigational error that had brought these primitive humans to the wrong system. They sent a message demanding surrender and threatening destruction. The only response they received was silence. Admiral Chun gave the order to advance. The Imperial fleet moved forward in perfect formation, weapons charging. The Varax defense platforms opened fire, sending streams of energy toward the approaching ships. Human shields absorbed the impacts, flickering but holding. The carriers deployed their fighters, and suddenly the space between the fleets was filled with thousands of small craft weaving through weapons fire. The Varax had never seen such aggression. Their enemies usually tried to negotiate once they saw the defenses. These humans just kept coming. The first Varax patrol fleet was annihilated in minutes. The ISS Vengeance led the charge, its massive plasma cannons tearing through Varax cruisers like they were made of paper. Human fighters swarmed enemy ships, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. The Varax commanders sent desperate calls for reinforcement, but the other patrol fleets were too far away. They could only watch as the humans cut through their defenses with terrifying efficiency. Commander Vasquez flew her fighter into the heart of the battle. She had transferred from her patrol vessel to lead a fighter wing. She needed to be in the thick of it. She needed to kill as many Varax as she could with her own hands. Her targeting computer locked onto a Varax frigate as she squeezed the trigger. Missiles streaked toward the enemy ship, punching through its hull and detonating inside. Secondary explosions rippled along its length before it broke apart in a ball of fire. She did not celebrate. She simply found her next target. The battle raged for hours. The Varax threw everything they had at the human fleet, but it was not enough. For every human ship that took damage, 3 Varax vessels were destroyed. The humans fought with a fury that the Varax could not understand. These were not soldiers fighting for territory or resources. These were parents fighting for their children. These were siblings fighting for their brothers and sisters. These were people who had lost everything and now wanted only revenge. The defense platforms fell one by one. The Varax fleet was reduced to burning wreckage, drifting through space. The path to Vor Prime was clear. Admiral Chun ordered the fleet to take up bombardment positions over the planet. The Varax government sent frantic messages begging for mercy. They offered to return the slaves. They offered tribute. They offered anything the humans wanted. Admiral Chun did not respond to any of them. Marine assault ships descended through the atmosphere, carrying thousands of soldiers in power armor. Their mission was simple: find the slave pens, free the humans, kill anyone who got in their way. The Varax cities were not prepared for the assault. Human soldiers moved through the streets with deadly purpose, overwhelming any resistance they encountered. The Varax had never fought an enemy on their own soil. They had always been the aggressors. Now they understood what it felt like to be prey. The slave pens were found beneath the capital city, massive underground complexes where beings from dozens of species were held in cages like animals. The human soldiers cut through the guards and broke down the doors. Inside, they found their people. 4 million humans had been taken. 2 million had survived the journey to Vor Prime. Many were injured. Many were traumatized. But they were alive, and they were finally free. The Varax High Council was captured in their bunker beneath the palace. They were brought before Admiral Chung on the bridge of the Vengeance. They begged for their lives. They claimed they were just following tradition. They said that slavery was their way, and they could not be blamed for doing what their species had always done. Admiral Chun listened to their excuses in silence. When they finished, he simply nodded to the guards. The council members were taken away to face trial for their crimes against humanity. The liberation of Vor Prime was broadcast across the galaxy. Other species watched in amazement as the young, primitive humans achieved what no one had ever done before. They had defeated the Voraks on their home ground. They had freed their people. They had proven that humanity was not to be underestimated. The slave markets across the galaxy grew quiet. Traders who had purchased humans suddenly found their merchandise far too dangerous to keep. Beings who had been planning raids on human colonies quietly abandoned their plans. The survivors were brought home to cheers and tears. Families were reunited. Parents held children they thought they would never see again. The galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had announced its presence not with diplomacy or trade, but with fire and fury. The message was clear to every species watching. Humanity protected its own. Cross them at your peril. Commander Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the Vengeance as it returned to Earth. She had found her younger brother among the survivors on Vor Prime. He was thin and scarred, but alive. He stood beside her now, looking at the stars that had once seemed so threatening. The war was not over. There were still Varax colonies out there. There were still slavers operating in the dark corners of the galaxy. But humanity had taken the first step. They had shown the universe what happened to those who preyed upon them. Admiral Chun retired from active duty 6 months after the liberation. He had seen enough war and death to last several lifetimes. His daughter and grandson had not been found among the survivors, and he carried that loss with him until the end of his days. But he took comfort in knowing that millions of others had been saved. He took comfort in knowing that the Varax would never hurt anyone again. The Terran Empire had been born in fire, and it would protect its children until the last star went dark. The galaxy learned a valuable lesson that day. Humanity was young. Humanity was still learning the ways of the stars. But humanity was not weak. They were not prey. They were the descendants of warriors and survivors, of people who had crossed oceans and climbed mountains and tamed their own savage world. They had emerged from the darkness of prehistory through blood and determination, and they would face the challenges of the galaxy with the same spirit. The Varax had taken millions of humans. The Imperial fleet had taken their lives, and the universe would never forget